NBL TV. See it live. Every match of the season, all the action as it happens. Full match replays and highlights when and where you want. On your PC, iPad, iPhone. With monthly and yearly packages, we have a subscription to suit you. NBL TV. See it live.
Hello everyone and welcome to It Goes Off, where we tick it off, where we deal with some of the issues bouncing around the NBL after round 3. And Grantley Bernard, some good news for the Cairns Taipans. You laid the boots into a little bit last week about their scoring output. Well, they've come back and bounced back in some impressive fashion. 2 games on the weekend, 88 points in their win over Sydney and 81 points in their loss against the Adelaide 36ers. So some good signs for the Taipans as far as scoring is concerned.
Yep, hats off to the Snakes. And 88 points and 81 points, they're great efforts on the road, given the scoring trends in the league this year. They absolutely handled the Kings quite comfortably and then went to Adelaide the next night and lost, in a close one. So, as we've expected from Cairns over the last few years, they are just going to be tough anytime they get on the floor against whatever opposition they are against the floor. I just wonder, though, whether they maybe play a little looser when they go on the road than compared to when they're playing at home. It might be worth you going back during the week and doing a little research to find out how their home scoring average stacks up against their road scoring average.
You might have something in that, Grantley, but full credit to Aaron Fernie. He gets the absolute very best out of his players, and I think that there's some subtle changes in what he's been doing offensively, and it looks like they're back on track. But what it does raise is some issues about the consistency of the Sydney Kings and also their reliance on Corin Henry and Darnell Lazar. We saw them last week against the Melbourne Tigers and they were sensational, combined for 46 points, but against the Cairns Taipans, almost irrelevant.
Combined for 8 points. And you just can't afford to have that swings and roundabouts efforts, especially from your imports. You need good, consistent effort and output every single game. Now, the Kings, they did get a big game from Ben Madgen, but they need their imports to step up and be ready to roll every week.
Well, they do, and one of the other teams in competition that's going through a difficult phase right now is the Townsville Crocs. They had a tough weekend. They dropped a couple. The one against the New Zealand Breakers in New Zealand, the Townsville actually played some good basketball and unfortunately came up short at the end. It looked like they were done and dusted, but to their credit, they fought back about 8 points down with a little over a minute to play and gave themselves a good chance. And at the end of it, just a tough call might have gone against them as well, which would probably give them a cause for some sort of complaint.
Look, I think the Crocs will probably feel a little
hard done by.
Hard done by is probably a good term. They were probably unhappy that they didn't get a call at the end of the game. Again, swings and roundabouts. Maybe back in Townsville at some stage during the year, that situation may be reversed. But for a team that's really desperate for their first win, when you think you've got a chance against the defending champion on their home court, and you don't get it, that is really deflating. And as it turned out, their luggage, the baggage just blew open the next night against Wollongong, and it was all over road for the Crocs.
That's right, on Sunday against Wollongong. But some good signs there. Gary Irvin down the stretch, former league MVP. He looks like he's slotting in very, very nicely. And Cedric Jackson, towards the end, it was a bit of a duel, and Cedric Jackson for the New Zealand Breakers, he once again showed that he's a quality player.
Look, there's no question about Cedric Jackson, and there's no question about Gary Irvin. Irvin had a quiet one to start with Townsville back in the league, but he's picked that up pretty quickly, and I think you're going to have no complaints about Gary Irvin or Cedric Jackson. I think, having said that, another New Zealand or former New Zealand import, Kevin Braswell, I think he's got some work to do with the Melbourne Tigers.
Well, it was a good game in Melbourne. They had over 5,000 people at Hisense Arena against the Perth Wildcats. And unfortunately for the Tigers, they weren't able to register their first win in their relatively new home court for them. So it's one that Chris Anstey would be very, very frustrated because they did a lot of good things, but much of it came undone because they had too many self-inflicted wounds with 25 turnovers. Not going to win too many games with 25 turnovers.
You are certainly not. If you keep giving the ball back to the opposition, it makes it pretty tough to score. But the other factor for the Tigers was they gave up, I think it was 15 offensive rebounds to the Wildcats, and probably 5 of those were in the last 5 minutes of the game, if not later. And to me, I just found in such a close game, because there was only 1 or 2 buckets in it, down the stretch, I just thought the Tigers looked like they lacked for intensity.
Well, I don't know about that. I think they were trying their hardest, but perhaps that extended full court pressure of the Perth Wildcats, which they're renowned for, and there was some good physical pressure, but as the game was wearing on, you could almost see the psychological pressure kicking in for the Melbourne Tigers, where they became very tentative against that press, and unfortunately just way too many turnovers. It was somewhat ironic. Is in the dying stages, the Tigers only trailed it, I think it was by 3 at the time, and Chris Anstey in the timeout specifically gave some instructions about how they're going to deal with some rebounding contests, and unfortunately the Tigers weren't able to execute in that area as well.
That was a big factor down the stretch when the Wildcats kept getting the ball back, after a missed shot after a missed shot. Well, when the clock is running in that situation, that was just killing the Tigers.
It's not going to get much easier for any teams in the competition, but this Friday the Melbourne Tigers at Hisense Arena again, taking on the New Zealand Breakers. So at 0-3, they've got a tough assignment ahead.
Yes.
Well, that's all we have time for on Ticket Off this week. You've been very good, Grantley, but don't forget to check out all the scores, stats, news and information. Go to nbl.com.au and follow the action. Also on 1, doing a fantastic job, and Channel 10 on Sundays at 2, doing a terrific work there. And NBL TV, they have been fantastic. If you haven't got a subscription, make sure you jump on. It's hard to find better value in any basketball around the world than what NBL TV provides.
$79 for the whole season. And I know as much as you hate to part with any cash, you would be happy to part with that $79.
Happy to part with it, given the quality of work that they're producing there. It's been absolutely superb. As I mentioned, as we do every week, we must pay thanks to those that support us and this wonderful game of ours. And it all starts with iNet.
Connect better.
10.
And 1.
Spalding.
And fun.
And Virgin Australia. Grantley, terrific work by you, and don't forget, check in a little later in the week and where you can have a look at all the goings on coming up in round 4 in our preview show. Until then, good luck and get out there and support your team. And this has been the world's greatest podcast, and it's called It Goes Off.